Welcome back, Cat 31 CATIA class. Today we're going to go over the angle clip, problem 4-3. So one thing I want you to note is that may not be obvious to you is that this is a constant thickness. So this is a piece of sheet metal with a 0.400 constant thickness, and the units are in inches. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a sketch of this view. And we're actually not going to do a close profile. We're going to break the rule of having a close profile and just draw this line, this arc, this line, and this arc. So only the outer part of this formed piece of sheet metal. Since it's a constant thickness, we will not have to create a close profile. We don't have to draw the rest of it. All right, so let's go ahead. Before I start, I do want you to note that these little crosshairs that you see are common on drawings involving formed sheet metal. So this sheet metal has a bend radius of 0.12 inches. Now this little these crosshairs indicate an intersection point. Well, intersection point of what? This horizontal line. If you were to extend this horizontal line and extend this 60-degree angle line, this would be the intersection point. So this is important when it comes to creating parts out of sheet metal. Constant thickness. Okay, so we're going to create our sketch with the origin here at 0, 0, or our intersection point at the origin, 0, 0. All right, so let's go ahead and go to CATIA. Okay, I'm going to exit out of this workbench, and we're going to go to Start, Mechanical Design, Part Design, and we'll call this problem 4-3. Okay, let's maximize this. We can always double click on the frame to maximize. Double click on the frame to maximize. Alright, so we're going to create a sketch, and I'll just use the YZ plane to sketch on. I'm going to reset my toolbars. So before I start my sketch, let me hit escape and deselect. I'm going to right click on any icon. I'm going to reset my toolbars to the default position. So customize. So my toolbars are out of order, I guess you can say, with respect to the default positions. So I can go to Toolbars tab, Toolbars, and say Restore Position of the Toolbars. Restore, and OK. And notice how it restores my toolbars. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and create a sketch on the YZ plane. Okay, so I'm going to start by creating the 60-degree angle. I'm going to go to the intersection point, and then I'll create a horizontal and then an arc. All right, so here we go using profile. Oh, one thing I did forget was to check my units. So let me quickly go to Tools Options before I start sketching. Tools Options. Open up General, go to Parameters and Measure, go to the Units tab, pick the first row, and make sure you select inches. All right, so once again, let's go. Let me hold on to the wheel to pan, and move the mouse. There it is. Okay, so I'm going to go to Profile. So I'll start somewhere over here on the side. Don't know exactly the length. I'll just guesstimate. So I'll just click. I'm going to select the origin, 0, 0. Click. Click. And then I'm going to go with tangent arc. tangent arc. Okay, notice it goes blue, letting me know it's a half an arc. This is a quarter arc, half an arc, 3/4 arc. Okay, so we'll go with the half an arc, 180 degrees. Click. And I can now hit escape, or I can just turn off this command. Okay, there we have it. So we're going to come back later on and add a fillet at this corner. All right, let's throw in some dimensions. So let me click on space to deselect. Well, let me go ahead and add the 60 degrees. So I'm going to pick the horizontal axis, or I can pick this horizontal, doesn't matter. Click on this one. There it is. Now notice how this is green. There's a horizontal constraint. If it doesn't have it, add a horizontal constraint using the relationships constraint icon or command. Okay, I'm going to double click on this one, give it a 60-degree angle. Okay, there we have it. Click in space to deselect. And let's throw in some dimensions. So let's go back to the drawing. Okay, so from this intersection point to the center of the arc, this little arc and the large arc share the same center point. Okay, so 2.610. So let's add a dimensional constraint from the vertical or the origin, doesn't matter, vertical to this point. Okay, double click, 2.61 is our measurement, enter, there it is. And let's go ahead and add the radius. 0.880 is our radius. Okay, double click, 0.880. Okay, so there's our radius. Okay, I'm going to click in space to deselect. All right, what other dimension do we need here? Okay, now we have this length here from this corner to the intersection point, and that measurement is actually 2.981. So we see 2.981. Okay, so from this phantom line, notice how the phantom line lines up with the intersection point. So we're going to use 2.981 plus the radius 0.680. Okay, so once again, to get this length to the intersection point, it's 2.981 plus 0.680. Okay, so let's go with a dimensional constraint. Position it, double click. So it's 2.981 plus 0.680. Oh, got out of the so I got out of the window by mistake. We go back again. So 2981 and 680. So highlight, left mouse click, 2.981 minus 0.680. And it'll do the math for me. So once I hit OK, there it is. It's 2.301. Oh, I was supposed to do a plus. Let me go back. 2. I already forgot. 2.981 and 680. 2.981 plus 0.680. Maybe I did get it right the first time. Don't remember. Okay, so hit OK. There it is. So So we have a measurement of 3.661. If you input the wrong measurement, I'm okay with it. Okay, so don't worry about it. If it's the wrong, if you're slightly off, don't worry about it. Okay. Now everything's green. One thing I do want you to note is the endpoint of the arc. The endpoint of the arc is not constrained. As you can see, I can move. Actually, I can see I can extend or shorten the arc. So we need to constrain it. So one thing I can do is draw a construction line. Okay, so I'm going to create a construction line. So let me go over to construction. Draw a line. And I'll start here at the tangent or at the center point. It doesn't matter. And go straight up. Make sure it's vertical until it turns blue. Notice it added the vertical relationship. If it didn't, you can always add one, right? Okay, let me click and space to deselect. All right, so now I'm going to add a constraint between the end of the arc and the line. So I'm going to hold on to the control key, pick the endpoint. Notice it turned orange, pick the vertical, and we're going to add a coincidence. So that'll merge them together. Coincidence, there it is, and OK. Okay, so click and space to deselect or hit escape. Now, one thing that I want you to note is construction mode is still on. So remember when we create our construction line, this is just a reference only. We needed to locate that point, but it's not part of the final sketch. So this is a construction element. Okay, so click and space to deselect or hit escape a few times and then turn off construction mode because you'll forget that it's on and then you start creating construction lines and you don't know why. It's because this is still on, so I'm going to turn it off. All right, so we can do a tool sketch analysis. So let's do a tool sketch analysis. Actually, let me move this to its proper location. There it is. Tool sketch analysis. Notice it's telling me danger. It's open, right? So we can see the cyan here and the cyan here. Let me click in an open area to deselect. So notice the cyan circles tells us, hey, this profile is open. Here's an endpoint and an endpoint. It's not closed. But we're going to leave it this way because I'm going to show you how to create a pattern extrude without closing your profile. Okay, so let's go ahead and close this. Now the reason we're going to be able to create a pad or extrude using an open sketch is by giving it a thickness. So it'll recognize that this will have a constant thickness. All right, so let's go ahead and exit the sketch. And I'm going to do, let me click in space to deselect. Let's take a look at the measurement. So this has a depth of 2.5. Yep, there it is, 2.5. So looking at the bottom view here, we have a depth of 2.5. What we're going to do is we're going to cut that 2.5 in half and go with 1.25 extrude in one direction and then do a mirror to extrude in the opposite. Okay, so we're going to do an extrusion of 1.25 and then mirror it over for a total of 2.5. So let's go back. Okay, so let's do an extrude of this sketch. Now it's letting us know, hey, this is an open profile. That's okay. Do you still want to use it? Yes. So we're going to type in the length. So left mouse click inside this window, type in 1.25. And then we're going to give it a thickness. So if you remember, the thickness on this is 0.400. So let's go back. Yes, so notice it's telling us, hey, you must use the thick option, thickness, or else we're going to have to reject your profile. Okay, so we're going to turn on the thick option. Turn it on. There it is, the orange filled circle or square. There it is, letting us know that the option is on. Okay, so we need to go over here and give it a thickness. So our thickness is 0.400. Let's hit preview. Now I want to make sure that we're going in the right direction. So notice that it did an extrude of 1.25 in one direction, gave it a thickness of 0.4 or 0.400. You can also give it a thickness in the opposite direction. Let's say in the opposite direction we wanted to go 1 inch. I'm just going to exaggerate and click away. Notice it gives it a 1 inch thickness in the opposite direction. Preview. So you can thicken in two directions. Well, we only needed to go inward, 0.400. So the second thickness, I'll just change it back to 0 and click away and preview. Okay, so now what we're going to do is mirror it to the opposite side. So we're going to click the mirror option, mirror extent. So notice it's going to mirror it 125 in the opposite direction also. And that'll give us a total of 2.5. Preview and OK. All right. Now, one thing I did forget was this fillet. Remember this fillet? Right now I have a sharp edge. This is supposed to be a round, a fillet. So this is 0.12 bend radius. So now how do we calculate this radius? Because we drew the outer profile, not the inner. In our sketch we created the outer profile. So we need to calculate this radius. It's just simply 0.12 plus 0.400. Okay, add them up and that'll give us the outside radius. Okay, so 0.12 plus 0.400. So let's go back to our sketch, sketch 1. Okay, let me zoom in to that origin. Okay, so now we're going to do a corner. That's our fillet. If you don't see it, you may have to dig out the toolbars. If you can't find the fillet command, or corner I should say, you can always go to Insert, Operations, Corner. Okay, so here's another way. All right, so let's click on corner. Okay, so we want to create a fillet between the 60-degree angled line and the horizontal. Click. Notice it starts to create a fillet. So now I need to click again to define my arc. Click. Now it's giving us a warning. Hey, we're going to have to trim off the excess here. Are you okay with that? And I'm going to say yes. Now you may lose some dimensions, some constraints in the process. If we do, we could just add them back in. Okay, so I'm going to say yes. And we didn't lose any, even though we don't have that sharp corner anymore, it still recognizes the intersection point. So we did not lose these dimensions, which is good. Okay, so now the radius. Let's go to the radius, double click. And we're going to type in 0.12 for the bend radius, the inner radius, plus the thickness, 0.400. And make sure you are in radius. Now you can always go to the drop down and pick radius and hit OK. And there it is. It did the math for us. When you add them up, you get 0.52. So that's your radius for the outside. Okay, so now when we exit, our pad will update. So we're going to go ahead and exit. Notice it turned red, letting us know it was updating. So now if we zoom into this fillet, I can always take a measurement with the calipers. Take a measurement. Notice it tells me it has a radius of 0.12. Okay, I can go ahead and cancel that to exit. Okay, let me give this a little bit of color. You don't have to do this. I'm going to right click properties, go to graph, and you know what, let me pick a tan color. There it is. All right, so let's create the features on this flange. Okay, so now we got to create this feature, this cutout, and we also have to create the outside periphery. Okay, so I'm going to start by creating the inside first, and then we'll worry about the outside. Okay, so from this phantom line, which lines up with the intersection point, right? We're going to create a sketch on this surface. And it happens to be centered. As you can see, we're right at the center. We're going to create an arc of 0.880. So what I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to start, I think I'll start from this corner here and just work my way around. And I'll just guesstimate the size using the profile command. All right, so let's go ahead and start that. So we're going to create a sketch on this surface. Okay, so I'm going to pre-select the surface and go with sketch. Now the cool thing is that our horizontal lines up with our intersection point. So if I was to unhide sketch 1, this horizontal would line up with this intersection point. Now you don't need to turn this on, but I just wanted to show you. So I can hide sketch 1. Currently we're in sketch 2. So the horizontal represents our intersection with the intersection of the angled line and the horizontal of sketch 1. All right, so let me hit normal. Okay, so I'm going to use profile. I prefer to have snap turned off. If you want to turn yours on or leave it on, it's fine with me. Okay, so let's go ahead and start that cutout. So use profile. And I'm going to try and stay centered when I create the large arc. But I'm going to start with the little ones first. But let me first start with this horizontal line. Click, work my way up. See how it turns blue, letting me know it's, let me zoom in a little bit. And click, and then I'm going to go with tangent, arc. Notice it's blue, letting me know it's 180. Arc, 180 degree angle arc, click. Go down. Click, create the larger arc, which is supposed to be centered with the vertical. So we'll just try and get close enough to get it centered with the vertical. Click. Now this one's supposed to be shorter than the one on the right. Click. Tangent, arc. Okay, see how I move across to keep that 180 and also line it up with this point here. Click and click. And now we can click in space or hit escape to deselect, and there's our profile. Okay, so let's throw in some dimensions for the arcs. Let's look at the radii of these arcs. So we have 0.88 for the large one, and the little ones are 0.310. Let's take care of the little ones first, 0.310. So let's put a dimensional, that's straight. 0.310, enter. Do the same thing with the other one. 0.310. Okay, and let's add one to the lower one, the larger arc, 0.88 or 0.880, same thing. 0.88 is the same as 0.880, and okay. Okay, notice this one is not vertical, so it went off at an angle. So we're going to click on this one, give it a vertical constraint. It didn't create it the first time around when I created the profile. There it is, vertical. Oh, got to do the same thing with the opposite one. Vertical, there it is. And okay. All right, so one thing I should do is center the large arc with the vertical. Now there's a center point that's hard to see. Because it's gray and it's small. But if you have trouble seeing the sketch or any of the elements, you can always turn off the background. You can always darken the background with low light. And now it's easier to see that center point. Okay, so I'm going to hold on to the control key. Click that center point. Click on the vertical. I can now let go of the control key and add a coincidence. 3, 2, 1, don't blink. And there it is. It moves it over. Centered with the vertical and OK. All right, so let's throw in some more dimensions. Okay, we have the 1.481. Let's throw that in there. 1.481. From the center of the large arc to the imaginary line. In our case, this phantom line is our H, our horizontal axis. So 1.481. So dimension. So 1.481 and OK. Notice how it's starting to turn green. Well, parts of it were already green, but we're starting to get more and more green. Okay, now let's get the dimension from this horizontal to the horizontal axis. Okay, so that dimension is 1.851. Okay, that looks good. All right, let's look at more dimensions. Okay, we have this 2.231 from the horizontal axis to the center point. So 2.231. .231 and OK. And it's going green, right? So the only one we have left is this arc. So if I pull on it, notice vertically it's not locked in place. So we're missing the dimension from this center to this horizontal. Okay, so let's go back. So from the horizontal axis, this phantom line to this center point is 2.981. 2.981 and OK. I can move this over. Okay, there it is. Now if some of your elements are still white after throwing on all these dimensions, that means you're most likely missing some like vertical constraints, horizontal constraints, or maybe you're missing a tangency constraint. Oh, this one actually doesn't have it. I'm surprised. It accepted it. All right, so maybe there's enough constraints to define it, and it ignores that it's missing the tangency here. All right, so if your sketch is magenta, that means it's over constrained. So if it's over constrained, you have to go in there and work your way from the bottom up and look for swirls. If you see a swirl in your constraints, that means it's fighting other constraints. So work your way up from the bottom and delete the ones with the swirls, and then go back and if anything turns white, go in and figure out what constraint you're missing and add a new one. All right, let me go ahead and collapse this branch. Okay, so let's do a tool sketch analysis. Everything's closed. Looks good. We don't see no cyan circles. Okay, so let's go ahead and close and exit. Actually, I did forget one thing, but we'll come back to it. We can also remove this portion, but I'll come back to it. So let me exit. Okay, so let me click and space to deselect. So now we're going to use the pocket command. So we're going to pick pocket. And notice when I pick sketch 2, for our pocket is going to tuck sketch 2 under pocket 1 feature. Okay, so when I pick the sketch, notice how it tucks it in. And we can say up to last or up to next surface. Up to next, so it'll go up to the next surface. Or you can just say up to last through the entire thing. Or you can give it a dimension if you want to go with the blind dimension. I'll just say go through last. Alright, so hit OK. And there's our pocket. Notice how the sketches are grayed out because they've been hidden. If I go to the no show layer, you can see it in the background. There's our 2 sketches. Come back to the show layer. Okay, so one thing we're missing are these 2 corners should be filleted. So one thing we can do is go back to sketch 1 and add a second sketch in our. So we can add a secondary sketch to create this round or fillets with this slope. Okay, so let's see, what do we need? Okay, so we need this 680 angle. And do we need anything else? Okay, so we know this is 680. 680, and so is this one, 680. And it's not obvious, but this arc is centered with this arc. And this arc is centered with this one. Okay, so let's go ahead and draw that line. So we're going to go back into sketch number 2. Double click on it. Oh, there it is. It turned white. So sometimes the graphics don't, your computer graphics will not regenerate or keep up with your changes. So remember earlier I said, hey, we're missing a tangency. So yeah, there it is. So yeah, sometimes CATIA will do that where it doesn't keep up with the latest. Okay, so let me hold on to the control key, arc, vertical, and add my tangency that's missing. Click OK, and notice everything goes to green. All right, so for some reason it didn't recognize it earlier. And yeah, sometimes CATIA doesn't keep up with all these graphic changes as you're changing things, updating. And it also happens in assemblies. But there's a way around this. Okay, so just be aware of it, that it does happen. All right, so let me pan a little bit over. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw 2 circles, but I'm going to draw them as construction elements. So I'm going to turn on construction elements. I'm going to draw 2 circles. So one here. And I'll draw a second circle at the other little arc. There it is. All right, so what I'm going to do is use that 680 radii, 680, and then I'm going to draw a line tangent to both of them. Okay, so I'm going to throw in a dimensional constraint of 680 radius. Double click, switch over to radius, and type in 0.680. Notice how it lines up with this edge. It should. Okay, so let me show you another way. Instead of having to type in a radius, I can always make a tangent to this edge, which is actually safer. Sometimes when numbers round off, it doesn't lie exactly on the edge, but we do want it to lie exactly on the edge. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn the lights on so I can grab the background edge. So I'm going to take this edge. Notice I have construction still on. I'm going to grab this back edge and project it. If you don't see project, you can always go to insert, and go project. Okay, so I projected that edge, hit OK. Then click and space to deselect, and notice anytime you borrow something from the background, it turns yellow and it adds it to it creates this geometric set, use edges. Okay, so it generated a branch specifically for the edge that we projected. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing with this one. We're going to project that one. We may not need it, but I'm going to go ahead and project it anyway. Let's go ahead and project again. So here's project. If you don't find it, you can always go to insert, 3D geometry, project. Hit OK, and then click and space to deselect or hit the escape key. Alright, so I don't think I need any more edges. I may need this one. If I do, I'll come back to it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to turn off lights. Just so it's easier to see my sketch, and that way it doesn't, I don't want to grab anything by mistake from the background. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this radius. I'm going to delete it. So now notice the circle is free to move, but I can add a tangency. So I'm going to hold on to the control key. So I have the circle and this horizontal selected. Let go of the control key. Add a tangency constraint. There it is. I can do the same thing with the other one. Select the circle, hold on to the control key, select the vertical, projected element, and we're going to add a tangency constraint. Okay, so what that'll give me are two circles, and now I can draw a line tangent to the circles. So I can chamfer this. Okay, so I can get that slope. Okay, so here's what we're going for. We're going for this edge. Let's go back. Okay, so I'm going to draw a line. Let me pan a little bit. So I want my line to grab onto this one. Now make sure you don't grab the center. See how it shows a filled circle? Filled circle is for a midpoint on the line or an endpoint. So just so I don't pick the midpoint by mistake, I'm going to move away from the midpoint. I'm going to click here and click here. So that'll constrain the endpoints to the two lines. Notice it added the coincidence constraint. So let me click and space to deselect. So now notice how when I move this line, it stays locked to these two lines. Now, I wanted this to be a solid line. Okay, let me click and space. Notice how it's dashed. Its construction is still on. So any new geometry I create, it creates it as construction elements. So I'm going to select it, turn it into a solid element. There it is. Click and space to deselect. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this solid object line. Hold on to the control key, select the line, select the circle, give it a tangency. I can let go of the control key and give it a tangency. There it is. Hit OK. Notice it's still white, so it's not fully constrained. Okay, so now I got to lock it. So let me click and space to deselect or hit escape. Hold on to the control key. So now I got to lock this line to this circle and give it a tangency. And OK, and click away. Notice it's green. So now that's locked in place. So now I can go ahead and close this off. So this is a second sketch, right? So we have our first profile, and this will be our second profile. Okay, so make sure this is on, or I should say off. We want it blue, so it creates solid lines. So I'm going to create two lines. So I'm going to go to profile. And I'm going to grab the end of this line. So I'm going to grab the end. By the way, I can always hover over the line and say right click and go to the nearest endpoint, go to midpoint. So I can always right click if I want. Click. Notice it grabbed the endpoint. Grab this endpoint and grab that endpoint. Click and turn off the command. Click and space to deselect. So I want you to notice that now we have two close profiles. We have the triangle and we have the cutout profile. So now when I do a tool sketch analysis, notice it recognizes the cutout profile and it recognizes the triangular profile. Notice it ignores the dash circles because they're construction elements, right? They're construction elements, so it ignores them. Okay, so everything looks good. Everything's closed. No cyan circles. Okay, so I can close this. Everything looks good. So now when I exit the sketch, it's going to add that chamfer here on the solid. Okay, so exit is going to turn red. 3, 2, 1. So now it adds the chamfer. All right, so now let's add the fillets. Okay, so we have fillets of 680. So both arcs have a radii of 680. Okay, so we're going to add a fillet on this corner of 680. So let's go to fillet. Pick the edge, not the surface, but the edge. If you have trouble picking it, you can always zoom in to pick it. Pick the edge. And we're going to type in 0.680 and preview and hit OK. And there it is. Okay, on this one, we can do a 680 on this one. If we want, we can always go back to the first fillet. So here's our first edge fillet. Let me collapse this. So we can always go back to our first fillet and pick a second one. Okay, so it's going to add it. We can pick more than one. So we already have this one chosen, right? This edge. So now we're going to pick this one. Notice they're both red, letting me know we have two of them. And see, it tells us you have two elements. In preview. And OK. And there it is. It's like, hey, what happened? Isn't this supposed to be round? Yeah, so we actually have to pick a third one. So we got a fillet and fillet. We could have done a tritangent fillet to take care of this in one shot. So because of the shape, because of the chamfer, we're going to have to fillet, fillet, fillet. 3 fillets. Okay, so let's go back. Double click on edge fillet. And we're going to add that third one. We're going to add this one. And see if it doesn't disagree with this one. Okay, so we have 3 now. Hit OK. And it did accept it. We could have always used a tritangent. I'm going to go ahead and do a tritangent just for fun. So let me go back. And so you know what? Let me remove this edge. So I can just click to remove. I want you to notice that they're red. I'm going to deselect. Deselect. So now I'm only going to keep the one on the left. Hit OK. So for fun, I'm going to do a tritangent. Yeah, let's do a tritangent. Okay, so go to the drop down. So when you go to fillet, go to the drop down. Go to tritangent. First pick the outer surfaces and then the middle one last. So we're going to pick the outer ones. Outer one. Then you pick the center last. Notice it turns a dark pinkish color. So that's the face we're going to, so it's going to remove this face completely and round it off, but it's going to maintain part of these two surfaces. Preview. Notice how the dark pink surface is going to be removed completely to be replaced with this round surface. Okay, there it is. Okay, so that's a tritangent. Okay, we're almost there. All right, so all we need now are the 2 holes. All right, so instead of using a hole command, because it's hard to locate the holes when there's no sharp edge here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a sketch on this surface and locate points to create the holes, right? All right, so let's go ahead and create a sketch on the base of the part. Okay, so let me turn it over. So I'm going to pick the surface to create a sketch on. Or we can always pick the bottom surface, the XY plane. So if I had a choice between a plane and a surface, I would rather take the plane. Because these 3 planes will always exist. They will never be deleted. But a solid can be deleted. And if the solid, the parent is deleted, then anything attached to it, like the sketch we're going to create now, will have to also be deleted. Okay, so if any of the grandparents are deleted, the whole family tree will be deleted, or most of it. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and pick the surface to sketch on, the hard surface. All right, so I'm going to use the circle command. Locate the center point, click. There it is, click in space. All right, so I'm going to put a dimension from the horizontal to the center. I know it's hard to see the center, so I can always completely turn off the background. Okay, there's our dimension. So let's go get some dimensions on this. So we have a dimension of 1.111. Let's go ahead and we'll come back for the other ones. Okay, so I'll double click. This is 1.111 and OK. Click and space to deselect. Now let's go for the diameter. Add a diameter. Okay, so let's see what that number is. So diameter of 0.594. So 0.594. Double click. Diameter, switch over to diameter. Left mouse click and highlight 0.594. Okay. All right, so notice if I grab the circle, it can only move horizontally, left to right. So that means I need a horizontal constraint. Okay, click and space to deselect. Let's go back. Okay, so it's given us this 0.62 dimension from the edge to the center of the hole. All right, so 0.62. So I need to turn the object back on. So let me turn the object and the background back on with light. Okay, so let me move this in a little bit. The circle, click in space. Okay, so I'm going to create a dimensional constraint from the edge. I can always project the edge if I want to. You don't have to. So I'm going to click the edge. Try and pick the center. There it is. I'm trying to pick the center. There's the center. Okay, so that dimension is 0.62. 0.620 and OK. All right, so hey, what about the second circle? So the second circular hole we can always mirror. We can mirror it, or we can use this dimension. So I'm assuming it's centered, but instead they're giving us a dimension of 1.880. All right, so if we do the math, maybe it's not centered. Okay, so maybe it's not centered. So I'm going to just go ahead and use the dimension 1.880. Okay, so let's create the second hole. Click and space to deselect. Okay, so I'm going to create that dimension from the edge to this center of 1.800. Let me double 1.880. 1.880 and hit OK. All right, so now we place that dimension. So now the center point is free to move. So one thing we can do is we can draw a line from center to center. So I'm going to draw a line, center to center, and then I'm going to give it a horizontal to that line, give it a horizontal constraint. There it is. So now that second hole is locked in all directions. Okay. Now this line has to be changed over to a construction element. It's not part of the sketch. Click and space. Notice now it's a construction element. Click and space to deselect and then turn this construction option off. Turn it off, or else any new geometry you create will be dashed lines. Okay, now what we can do with these circles is make them equal to each other. So I'm going to hold on to the control key, select the circle, select the first circle, go to relationship constraints and make them equal. So we do have the equal option. Notice it makes them equal and it adds the equal signs. So these are not tangency lines, these are equal signs, making these two equal in size. And OK, click and space to deselect. Okay, let's do a tool sketch analysis. Everything's closed and OK. Exit. And do a pocket, right? So click and space to deselect. So we have sketch 3. We're going to create a pocket of sketch 3. Notice how sketch 3 is tucked in under our pocket number 2. We already have a pocket number 1 for this one. This is our pocket number 2. And we can say go through up through last, go through the whole thing, or we can say up to the next plane. Up to next is fine, and OK. So it'll create a hole up to the next surface, or in this case 2 holes or 2 pockets. All right, so it's optional if you want to turn off your XY planes. I can always right-click, hide, right-click, hide, right-click, hide. And they're in the background. If I go to the no-show layer, there they are in the background. So all your sketches are automatically moved over to the no-show layer. Notice how they're grayed out. Everything that's grayed out is in the no-show. I can always go back to the show. So all these are grayed out. Okay, let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. So let's go back. I think we got everything. Didn't miss anything. Let's see. Yep, we got everything. All right, so now let's go ahead and save it as problem 4-3. So angle clip, problem 4-3. Okay, so go File, Save or Save As, Save. I'll save it in my Chapter 4 folder. So this is problem 4-3. You can always give it a different name if you want, like angle clip. I'll leave it up to you. And save. All right, so that's the end of the angle clip assignment. See you in the next video.